Welcome to another episode of TIDES, the podcast where we explore transformational innovations reshaping enterprise strategies, especially in the age of AI. I'm your host, Shveta Malhan, managing partner and co-founder at Allianz, and I help HR and business leaders navigate AI-driven change so their organizations can adapt, adopt, and thrive. I'm particularly excited about today's conversation because my guest, Susy Martins, and I first connected through her incredible posts on LinkedIn. Right away, I knew I had to speak with her, and I was blown away by her energy and the depth of her insights around HR, business strategy, and transformation. It turns out Susy started her career on the business side before transitioning into HR, which gives her a unique perspective on solving HR challenges creatively. And something that we share in common is our background in Lean Six Sigma, which we've both leveraged to bring structure and data-driven problem solving into HR. Today, I can't wait to dive into all of this, from how AI is impacting HR to how a business mindset plus Lean Sigma methodologies can spark real innovation in people function. So let's jump right in. Welcome to TIDES, Susy.
Thanks for having me, Shveta. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Susy, I'm thrilled to have you on this show. Given your journey from business to HR and now AI-driven transformation, what shifts have you seen in HR with the rise of AI so far?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think it's obviously the thing everyone's talking about and they're trying to figure it out right now. I think the main trend is that everyone wants to put AI in and they think it's going to give them a lot of savings and it's going to change everything, right? And, when you see like the stats out there, I think it's something like, it's a priority for every CEO. And they're expecting 20% savings last year from AI. So everybody wants those savings, but they're just not realized yet, right? So I think this is a thing, like this is kind of a little like chicken and egg thing, right? But I think that it takes time. Like the AI is not mature yet, right? So I think people are realizing that piece. I think from an HR perspective as well, like people were thinking, this is just a big broader comment, right? Like that they lose their jobs. Oh my God, AI is here, we're losing our jobs. Well, the reality is that no. If you look at like Davos, for example, like the annual conference, what they said is that basically 73 million jobs net will be created by the end of 2030 is the projection. So that means that we actually are going to be creating more jobs, not less, right? Even though with the mix of jobs that may change with AI and others that will be created. And a lot of that creation is around like smart cities, like kind of like actually environmental space and engineering and structural engineering. All of those types of things are projected to grow. And then obviously we still need to eat. So there's farmers and there's like drivers, bringing us our food, all of that stuff. All those jobs are still there. So I think from like, a people perspective, like AI is here, but, we're still settling into it. And the reality is it's not going to take away our jobs, right? It's actually, we're just working in that context. So it's like, I think, the future of work and even the future right now is just like, how do you actually, operate the most effectively knowing and using AI? And those who don't learn how to use AI, I think are going to get left behind. Like this is just like using Excel, using email, like all of these norms that have existed over the years, like this is a new one. So now we're walking into this and just figuring it out.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Susy. And given your background and experience in HR, because to your point, yes, it's definitely a tool. We need to learn how to use it in our day-to-day lives. It's not going to replace us. It's going to augment us. And it also has potential to be integrated into various parts of our workflows. So do you see from your perspective that most HR teams have the budget and the strategic support necessary for AI implementation within their capability, or are they still in wait and see mode?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this question because it's like, what am I seeing in an HR from an AI perspective? And I think there's three things that HR really owns, right? It's hiring, right? And then of course the retention of people, and then people will exit. So maybe if we talk about the three pieces. So I think the first one in hiring, there's a lot of AI considerations, a lot. So I think the first thing is like, oh God, like everybody goes online and reads things or sees blogs, and they'd say, hey, use this bot to apply to jobs, right? So from a candidate perspective, like there's a flooding of applications that are built for the algorithms, right? So what that means is that you could post the most junior role, like let's say you posted a role that's like a HR administrator. It could be an administrator in any function, right? That job will get like automatically hundreds to thousands of applications, which is hard to manage. Like, what do you do with that? Because, how do you know who's good and most people probably don't even know they applied to the job or your company. So I think this is a major issue, like from an AI perspective. And I don't think anyone's cracked the nut on this, right? And like on the other side, like, to actually post out those jobs, right? When we look at hiring, like there are systems like Bright HR, like that is helping you kind of streamline job posting descriptions, all of those types of things, right? So I think that we're seeing that getting used more often. And also like the HR systems have some of this technology being built into them. So I think that that's where HR is kind of using it from a hiring perspective, but the flood of all of these applications is actually making things more manual. So I think that somebody will break through and we'll kind of figure out what's the better way. And I think the one hack that most people are doing is they're interjecting with questions, because the AI will build to, like all the algorithms will be fed with all these applications, but if you make them answer questions like, 4 questions about a job, that kind of can help slow down the process. So I think that's kind of a hack that's out there right now from a recruitment perspective. Then I think like from living in your organization and from an HR perspective on a retention side, I think that there's things like, I don't know, if you look at HR systems, like I used the example of HiBob just because I know, like they've actually built in algorithms to help you predict, like they're doing this right now when someone might quit. So that's AI and that's built into the system. So it's about leveraging your system. I did a talk about this like a while ago and I said, when I use my microwave, the only thing I use is add minute. And this is kind of like our HR systems or any system we use really. We need to actually think about like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like in the system and how can we better use it? Knowing the context is changing. And obviously all of those different providers are amping up their AI and technologies, right? To meet the moment. So I think there's that from like a retention perspective. Oh yeah, the other thing about in the teams for AI is not just in the HR team, because HR owns like, kind of the people strategy. So I think the big one that we're seeing there and the uptake in AI is, in the different functional areas, right? So I want to just highlight on R&D, right? Research and development, like your tech teams. So I think that you can use the use of AI there is going to be the fastest, right? Because the most technical people, they're going to be the first to adopt this thing. And we're seeing it. They're adopting it like probably twice as fast as any other functional area or area in any business. So I think from a HR perspective, they need to be thinking about, like, what does that mean from team structure? So previously we needed a lot of people to build code and like check code, like QA, all these things. These jobs are changing. So I think from an HR perspective, when you think about using AI and thinking about AI, it's like, actually, how do you relook at your organization from a role perspective? Kind of bottoms up, like relook at like, what are the actual things that you're doing in each of these jobs? So getting closer and closer into the business so that you can rethink how to have your models, right? Like it's going to be people and computers and like robots, AI, all of that stuff mixed together, just kind of like we've always dreamt about, but it's a lot of work to deconstruct and make sure that you're doing that well. So I have clients that I'm working with that right now, they're like talking about being an AI first company when it comes to people strategy, which is fascinating. I was like, that's awesome. So like, so they're doing pilots, right? Like they're piloting out different structures. They're piloting out different product development using AI first and having the whole company do the pilot, right? So I think that's something to think about, like from, what I'm seeing from an AI managing the retention. And then I guess the last thing is when people leave, right? And the thing is with a couple thoughts there is like when people leave your organization, I guess it happens more often now is the first point. Right. So HR needs to be thinking about how do I build a sustainable structure? And that's leveraging technology and, that can sustain people leaving like every year, potentially, you know what I mean, from a job at higher percentages. So that's one thing. And then the other piece, I think, is where it actually comes to the human touch. When people are leaving, I think that we really need to take that opportunity to connect, the exit interview, talk to them about, that great opportunity to find out like what is going well and what needs work and, what other insights do they have? Because people are the most honest when they're leaving, right? So I think that's a place where you could use AI, but I would say it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. And you make a really good point that HR definitely needs to integrate AI into their ecosystem, but also business is shifting. And that puts pressure on HR, because I'll give you an example. The one that I use very frequently is the marketing team, where let's say, for example, with AI agents in the mix, if consumer behavior fundamentally changes and we are not shopping, but we have our agents and we give them our specs that this is what I'm looking for, this is the price point, this is the quality and whatnot, and they go through the e-commerce ecosystem to buy the product for us, then how does it impact the marketing team? Because now they are not selling to humans only, they are selling to machines as well. Yes. And that puts pressure on the marketing capability in the sense that they have to now rethink the structures, the processes, the technologies that they have in their ecosystem, which has impact on people as well. because it's, to your point, it's not just about letting people in the marketing team go, but the marketing function has to rewire its anatomy, which is where the partnership with HR is so key, because now you are not just looking at, do I need these many people, but you're looking at who do I need, where do I need, and how do I remobilize talent? So in that scenario, do you think HR capabilities are ready to support the business transformation at this scale? Because it's also not just marketing that's going to be impacted. It's like another thing that I use very frequently is the kind of change AI is bringing is very close to this movie title, Everything Everywhere All at Once. The AI has the potential to touch everything in your business at the same time.
Yeah. Like, do I think they're ready? I think no one's ready. Like, even your best people are not ready, because it's like you're breaking your teeth, right? Like, a lot of the stuff is brand new. And, your marketing example like hits well with me, because, the one thing I do see where everyone is using the agents right now, like, it is something that hit the world by fire, I think, in January. Everybody's like, I have an AI agent for that. I have an app for that. And the first group that really went crazy on that was marketing, because you can save a lot of time. Like, basically, marketers go out there and they try to figure out, like, what are all the competitors pricing our products at today? So like, I have clients where they've actually set up AI agents to just check what everybody's pricing was, fill in a spreadsheet that someone on their team used to do that took them an hour a day, and that's automated. They just saved like a whole day of work, right? Like, and also like their analytics are probably better, right? Because they can get more and more insights because of the AI. So I think that is kind of like where it's going. And the other area too that I keep on seeing now is on the sales side too, and merging with the engineering side, is the go-to-market engineer, right? So this is becoming a technical person that just focuses on sale, leveraging all the AI and other technologies available to actually hit your sales. Like, it is about relationship building, but now it's like a whole different level. It's a different profile. So things are definitely shifting, and it's a blend of like the human curation, I think, and putting people in where we should be, on where it requires creativity or human connection, all of those pieces, and then maximizing the other pieces using AI. So it's, I think companies and HR and everyone needs to spend more time figuring out what are the best tools and testing out like 2, 3, 4 of them all at the same time. I think the trick is that, the AI chatbots, like the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, et cetera, people are comfortable with that. You can Google, fix your messaging. They're very helpful. But then the internal side of things at companies make it much more sensitive. You don't want to put your information, obviously, into ChatGPT for your company. It's all private and it gets into their model. So there's players like Cohere in Canada, like, which will become like corporate solutions. So I think that's a struggle too for HR, like the privacy side. And then figuring out like, how do you balance that? Because things are moving so quick. You don't want to have to wait like 2 years to put this in. When, because of risk and compliance not allowing you to use AI, right? Like, we'll become continuously less productive.
Yeah.
So I would say follow the lead of companies like RBC. Like, RBC is a huge bank. It's like one of the top leaders in terms of integrating AI into its organization, like in the global rankings. So that's good to see. And something hopeful, I think, that everybody should kind of follow what they're doing and making sure controls are in place.
Absolutely. I also feel like now that I'm kind of looking at double clicking on how do we integrate AI into an organizational ecosystem. To your point, if we take FinTech or RBC as an example, they have implemented this intelligence at the workflow process level. So this is where I'd love to pick your brain on how do Six Sigma methodologies help organizations think about integrating AI in their fabric, in the DNA, in terms of how work is actually getting done. I mean, yes, there are enterprise solutions like Copilot. We can use it at an enterprise level. A ChatGPT can be used as at an enterprise level. But we also have the potential of integrating AI deep into the workflow anatomy.
Yep. And I think you bring up a good point, and we've chatted a little bit about this, is that, AI is it's a fad too, right? Like, everybody wants to say like, oh, this is AI, like my system is built on AI. Well, of course, it's like machine learning, it's predicting things, like, okay. But like the thing that happens during this time are people forget, what are they even trying to do? Like, they have a bit of FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? Like, in terms of like not having the AI, not knowing it, et cetera. So they just start doing things, right? Which is not helpful. And I think that's where Six Sigma comes in, right? Like, you can test things, of course, like try them out, get interested, curious. That's amazing. But I think we have to go back to our foundations, right? Like, what problems are we trying to solve, right? And, being focused on those and, focused on things like product market fit, if you're scaling, like that's your number one, or in all businesses, right? So like, if you're focused on that, then AI may or may not be the solution, right? Like, it's a tool out there that you should understand and know how to use. Should I use machine learning? Should I use a chatbot? Should I use an AI agent, right? Is there one specialized enough to solve this problem? So I think going back to tools like Six Sigma, which I like stand behind, I think that Six Sigma and Lean, are programs that were rolled out in the early 2000s, that took hold in a lot of industrial businesses in particular, even financial services, big corporates across the world. They're really focused on like Six Sigma is about reducing variability, right? Like in your process that basically, that you would do things more consistently to drive more, effectiveness in your business. And Lean's about cutting out steps, right? To make it much more efficient. So I think the use of both of those is important now. We're not at growth at all cost markets. We're in a very uncertain market, and we're in a place where we need to focus on the bottom line. So the more we can focus on those problems to solve that actually make us profitable versus getting distracted and just like throwing an AI system on top, I think it's going to be critical, right? And like for leaders to really, get the signal through the noise, you know what I mean? Like cut through all of that to just say like, okay, we should be investing our time in investigation and all of our piloting on this because we're solving that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Six Sigma has such beautiful tools which can actually help us unpack the process workflows in a way where we can make those informed choices and decisions. Like if we so I always talk about 3 flavors of AI. AI, we always did robotic process automation. It's not new. We've been doing that for a long time. It's still going to continue. So that's one flavor where AI is automating. The other is where AI is augmenting our capabilities. So if I'm doing a job, I'm using AI, I can do my job better. And the third is the agentic AI, which is autonomous decision-making systems who can do complete workflows on their own. But not all process or all parts of a process in an organization needs one flavor of AI. It could be a combination of these 3, or maybe there are other versions as well that need to be integrated into the process workflow. But if we don't understand our process workflow, how do we make that decision and choice? So this is where I feel frameworks like, to your point, like let's start with the problem first. DMAC is a great framework to guide us through that. But CyberCause is also so beautiful because especially in HR, how many of our workflows are actually documented to that level where we can decide, oh, this is a waste. This doesn't make sense. This can be automated, or this is where we should use AI in this flavor. What do you think?
I agree. I don't think people this is the not sexy work. So people like to work on the fringe, right? Like they're working on the edges, like, oh, I'll write my emails faster, right? I will get some trends. I'll ask for opinions and augment my thinking with, by prompting the AI, right? Like I think most people are in the chatbot of AI. Like that's what they're thinking of. And what you're thinking of is like the next level, right? Which is hard work, right? Like, and the same thing I said, like if you look at redefining rules, like that's what's going to be required to actually make things more efficient, right? And I think we haven't done that. And it's easier, I think, and still not that easy in a younger organization than it is in the older, more complex, larger organizations, right? So I think we're looking at rules and processes. And like, if you think about AI, like I did a project, it would be like, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years ago, when it was an AI project where we were looking at claims automation. So we were looking at, okay, like how can we automate claims adjudication? But then you need to think about like fraud. Okay, so how do you think about that? So you're building the core of the AI to think and, like of which ones to reconsider and kick out for manual review, and then which ones could go automatically. But it's a $1 billion claims bucket. So if you mess this up, you could approve, which is the worst of the outcomes, things you should auto approve for hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like if you because a lot of the claims are just smaller, right? So there has to be a lot of work and a lot of parallel processing, right? Which would be this type of like heavier Six Sigma based or like just iterating kind of process. So AI doesn't necessarily mean fast. I think it's faster now because things are getting smarter, but it's also risk tolerance. But I think there's still a lot of time required that can't be underestimated for teams to do things in parallel, right? To kind of figure it out, especially if you're changing something fundamental to what you do. If your core of your business is like, claims handling, for example, like that's not a like, let's put in a chatbot, right? Like that's like, okay, like what are we doing? What problems are we trying to solve? What types of things exist? How could we tackle them? Which ones would be less risk, right? There's a lot of sophistication in that. And, maybe like even the smaller orgs, if they're trying to split out things, like they could look at corporates, right? Like people who are good project managers, strategists, et cetera, that have done this, that have deconstructed things that are in a matrix environment that's very global and kind of bring that lens into your organization to be like, okay, like I'll help you think through it. You guys probably know all the tech stuff and like, some of these different flows better than we might, but we know how to kind of think about it and like break it down in a way into flows that you can start to work on it and actually just move forward in a new way. So anyways, just one example. There's a million ways to do it. I just think of that because that's where I grew up and I just know how many experts there are in those types of spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just curious to know, because you and I both learned about Six Sigma in our journey at GE. Which part of Six Sigma do you like the most, that you have found most valuable in, let's say, identifying which problems to solve or unpacking the problem or prioritizing? Let's say if I have 10 problems to solve, how can I use these tools, or which one is your favorite to help you make choices and decisions?
Yeah. So it's funny, like Six Sigma is all about like, there used to be a book of knowledge, I'm sure you know, like at GE that was like this, like, I don't even know, like 1,000-page online resource. It was like, oh my God. And it was hard to pass the test and like I do well on it, right? And we had to do a couple of projects that we actually managed using those methodologies, mentored by someone who was like a black belt, which was somebody who was certified at higher levels, right? And, so I did all of that and I did all of that testing, et cetera, and like learned all the concepts. And I think, now that I'm many years out from that, the thing that sticks with me is like DMAIC, like the most basic framework, like the premise of just like there's several different frameworks in Six Sigma, but one of them is like DMAIC. So it's like DMAIC. So define, like I always start with this, like define, what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? And then the M is measure. And what's the smallest unit of measurement that you could use to accurately measure, the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And these two could take you a long time to decide what to do. Like they may seem very basic, but if you actually sit back and think, what are you trying to solve? Because a lot of times people start with like, something else, like maybe the impacts of something you're trying to solve, right? Like that's down the line, but actually you're trying to get back to that source. Like, what is it? Like what's that control point? Right. So you have to start with the defining the problem. I think that this is a good method. It's a good like mental roll through, right? You could go with what is the problem? Like, how would I measure it? The A is analyze, then analyze it. And then once you've analyzed it, because now you figured out how you want to measure it, you can start to improve it. Right. And then you can see how it goes. And then the C is control. And usually what would happen is control is the worst one to maintain because people get excited about like the problem. And then, they figure out how to do it. They analyze it. They're like, all right, looks like I'm improving it. Done. But then the control is where the money's at, right? Because then that means it's sustainable and no one has to touch that stuff again or, whatever it means to your scenario. But you don't want to keep on revisiting these problems, right? So anyways, so that's the one that I like the best, which is the very first one. It's like level 1 of Six Sigma. So, or maybe even level 0. So how about you, Shveta? Which one do you like or what do you think of?
I have been leaning a lot on SIPOC, to be honest with you, Susy. And that really helps unpack the real anatomy of what we are trying to solve for. It might not be as structured as we used to implement DMAC at G, but flavors of that have definitely kind of through osmosis just become part of how we execute. We don't do project charters. Like, for example, in HR, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen HR teams writing a deep project charter around what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and how it's going to solve what problems. We just jump into solving problems, which has its pros and cons. Yes, it does give agility, but at the same time, in context of AI, I think documentation is going to become so key because it's going to be a cross-functional team that you're bringing in to solve for issues and problems or challenges. And for that, good documentation is going to be key so that everybody's on the same page. Anyways,
I agree, actually. No, just on that point, I think I agree because we're at the foundational piece of AI, right? Yeah. And the AI is only as good and ethical as you build the core. So I do think documentation should play a big piece of this so that you understand what you're building, right? It's like a kid. You teach the kid to tell the truth and keep on teaching them the same thing, like eat your food, eat your veggies, like eat whatever, and then that you've trained your kid to eat well, right? Like the same thing with the AI. So what are you teaching it? You know what I mean? And why? And what kind of inputs did you give it? Right? Because this will then start to direct everyone when you let it rip. You know what I mean? And just put it out into the real world, so to speak. So anyways,
that's right. So I'll give you 2 more examples, which are very recent and which I feel very excited about because using Six Sigma helped me feel excited about doing those 2 projects. One was where a client was trying to replicate their local process in a different geography, and they did not have their processes documented. So I went through a journey with the client to say, okay, let's pick out of the 50 processes that you use in your function, let's pick one, the most used process, and let's break it down. So we used SIPOC to break down the process. And then we didn't just stop at SIPOC. Then I layered in methodologies from marketing, so I borrow from all lived experiences because there's no one specific playbook that we can apply to the change that we are experiencing now. So we did the SIPOC, we dismantled the process. Then we said, okay, now help me understand who are the actors at different stages of the process, so I can identify which roles are touching the system at what point. And then we got deeper into, now tell me, what tools are these actors using in their journey of the process, and where are the biggest friction points and barriers in their process? So that gave the client a very holistic picture of, this is how my work is being executed, and here are the bottlenecks and friction points. You can also call SIPOC as journey mapping, but it's just a different approach to doing that. Mm-hmm. But at least it gives a good starting point for a strategic conversation around, one, is this problem worth solving? And if it is, what parts of the problems are worth solving?
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's just the stuff that no one likes to go through, right? Like they're just like, it's kind of like people are like, okay, we're going to move this to another country. And you're like, okay. What, have you thought about anything? You know what I mean? And it's just, and I think a lot of people right now don't have the experience, and there's so much turnover in every job everywhere that it creates a lot of risk, right? Because there's a lot of people who don't know how to think through it. A lot of people don't have the historical knowledge on it, right? So having someone actually come and map that out is good, right? Because it also builds the skills. Right. So people can start to think this way, you're just making a list of like how to problem solve, right? Like, it's just like, who's doing what, using what, when, right? And like, what are all the handoffs, right? So it seems basic when you talk about a high level, but it can be very complex, right? And you can't understand it once it's in flow. So
That's right. And I think this is where HR typically didn't have to play, but now they will have to support the rest of the organization, because it's going to fundamentally change. AI is going to fundamentally change, or I shouldn't say AI. It's because of AI, consumer behavior changes, and changing consumer behavior puts pressure on different parts of the business to change how work is done. So work fundamentally is going to change. And this is where, if HR can build these capabilities, I'm sure not everybody can go and get Six Sigma certified or trained, but I don't think we need to. The information is so easily available. If we know which framework to test, try, and apply, that will help us build that muscle. It's not perfection that we're aiming for. It's getting visibility into problems so that we can make more informed choices and decisions. That's what we are aiming for.
Yeah. It will continue to evolve the models and the businesses. Like if you go back 10, 15 years, and like Gartner is a leading voice in the HR space, right? They used to draw pictures of the future of work and what it would look like. And they're right. Like it was like people, and then they had like computers, and then they had like robots or something. Yeah. Right. And then and then they actually, at that time, they were so ahead of their time in their thinking, like even the Deloittes of the world, they would say, recruitment in the future is going to be a technical head, and then another head will be just for branding. I think they're right. We're still even not there. But they called this probably a decade and a half ago. And it's because, you are going to need to have someone who is completely technical, because this is going to be about the technical delivery. Just like that go-to-market job went to technical delivery, you have to have those skills and modernize your approach to understand all that stuff. And then you still need to have someone who's branding, but that person will probably have even more technical aptitude than they probably thought before. And then that operational excellence, I think, is a good one. No one thinks about this because it's like the most boring thing. Like no one aspires to be an ops. No one wants to care about how things are actually done. So I think, the better you're at that, the more sustainable your business is. And the more sustainable your business is, the less, I guess, risk you'll have as people turn over, right?
Yeah.
If you look at some of the more mature organizations, when people turn over and they use 25 systems from 10 acquisitions, that's really hard. It's really hard to be accurate. I give it to anyone who works in customer service in a big organization. It's got to be one of the hardest jobs, right?
Yeah.
And, and going forward, people aren't going to want to do it, right? Or know how to do it in all these legacy systems. So how do you modernize that? I think that's very expensive and hard. So it's kind of layering probably interfaces on top of those things to make it easier. But again, that's a technology play that someone would have to think through that would leverage multiple, I think, approaches as well as AI.
Yeah. And it's very important time for HR to be thinking about operational excellence, because again, they're not the only ones that are thinking about OpEx in their function. Every part of the business is thinking about it. So, and if HR is not ready, then nobody in the business, this is what I think, nobody in the business is going to stop and wait for HR to be ready to support them on the people side. And if HR doesn't, then it's a little bit of a tricky situation, because when business views solving problems, the tendency would be, because of the skill set in the business, they will view it only as an engineering problem. And then HR will have to do damage control, because people in this mix will be missed. And this is a huge opportunity for HR, I think, to up the game in their capability, rewire their anatomy, have the right systems in place to support the business transformation, at least on the people side.
Yeah, I think for sure the rewiring is necessary. I always say ops, a good day is when no one talks to you. Someone's talking about ops, that sucks, because then that means it's a lot to fix, right? Like you want to be humming in the background, and like, operations of any type, right? Like you don't want people talking about your HR system. Like they shouldn't even barely know what it's called, right? Like it should just work, right? But to get it to work, to your point, and to figure out like how people want to work now and how to integrate different things that are becoming expectations, you have to be able to do it with your systems and like have people who are able to understand it and make those flows happen. So yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah. So as we get into the final segment, Susy, I'd love to hear from you your perspective on how different HR teams, one, are ready for AI transformation. Let's just focus on their own HR capability and what can they be doing differently.
So I think it starts with like education, right? Like going, like there's like, what is that called? Like the HR outsourcing and shared services network, for example, like a group like that, I would go to that conference and see what is everyone doing right now. So and you can get up to speed pretty quickly, right? Or go to Transform, another big technology conference from the HR space that's held annually, right? Or go to Microsoft Reactor, or different groups locally that talk about AI all the time, or even, local example like Jeff Walden, he's focused on AI. He's like a OG in the tech space in Toronto, right? So like follow him, get close, ask questions, right? Because I think you need to figure out if you're building, how do you pick the right solutions that can help you, I guess, onboard and then double check your work. If things are really manual and it's a very few people working. So those are probably the things you need to figure out is like how to, you're a generalist, you're going to be posting roles, right? You're going to be interviewing for those roles. And then you're going to be entering the information. And the entering the information is actually usually where it falls down, because that's the piece no one likes and everybody's tired and like there's too many things to do and then something goes wrong, right? So I think you already have systems that have some controls, but like it would be cool to use like Operator, for example, and like have them just check all the things you would check and make sure that it's correct. Right. So that would be an easy one to do like right off the top. And then I think like in terms of like hiring, et cetera, like just even putting in the questions, like being more thoughtful about your flows. The other thing you could do is you could probably think about the use of technology and AI around monitoring probation periods. Because, when you're moving fast and you're the one person team, that's the thing that usually the business will come back, be like, well, like what happened with hiring this cohort? We're not happy, or, what managers are saying. So if you're doing all this busy work of like posting jobs, hiring, interviewing, onboarding, putting in the information, running sessions, taking ER questions, like you're doing everything. The technology becomes very helpful when it can kind of like help you do those surveys, collect feedback, and some of that's AI and some of that's just like easy survey stuff. But like there's probably a way to optimize this, right? So I would research some of those things. I think as you get bigger and more mature on the other spectrum, I think you really need to understand the capabilities and roadmaps of some of the best systems, right? Because if you want to be an HR team that you're really going out there and just, it starts with your platform, right? Your HRIS, you don't want to be touching that thing all the time, right? Like what are ways to optimize that and not have to build an army of a team, right? So I think that just understanding, the roadmaps of, the up and coming systems like a HiBop, like I said before, like those guys are great and they're investing in that space. Workday is a classic, right? Like if you're super global, super complex, where you need to have like a lot of different, risk and controls, like I would see what they're doing. But I don't know, like they're kind of heavy. So I'm just wondering like who is going, like, the HiBobs are taking over, you know what I mean? HR bamboos are too small to kind of get you to that big space. There's UKG. So there's lots of different systems and they're all at different places of maturity. So I would say talk to people who did recent implementations. See like what went well, where there are gaps. That's what I would do, right? And then keep on getting informed, just like I said, for the little guys of like what's going on in the environment. Like honestly, if you just spent like 2 weeks doing this, you'll get completely up to speed. You can even, this is where you can use AI tools, is like, you could prompt your AIs to tell you like, I am, the head of HR for an organization, and I'd like to implement a system that, allows me, flexibility to do these 10 things, and I'd like to have it to be as automated as possible and, strong modules in these different areas. Can you evaluate these 3 different tools and tell me considerations? And you can feed that into different, like you can put that into ChatGPT, you can put it in Claude, you can put it into like my chat, right? And see what comes out, right? And then just, it helps you advance your thinking about it. And think about, like, you can ask them where to go to find information, or what are the best conferences, best speakers to follow. There's lots of great people to follow, like in AI space, right? So just figure out 2 or 3 of those and just go behind it.
Yeah. Well said. And what's your take or perspective on internal build for HR? Like, maybe there are organizations who can't invest in like a tech stack with Workday or, like big solutions, and can't afford them. What would you suggest to them? Like, well, how feasible is a build for an HR function? And if they do go on that journey of internal build, maybe not full internal build, maybe pockets of their tech stack is an internal build, how can they do it successfully?
So I think, like, in the spirit of, like, the Canadian companies and supporting them, like HUMI, like HUMI, right? I don't know if you know it, Shveta, like it is HR system, it's locally grown, and it's for those small companies, right? Like when you're just getting started, and their philosophy is to have all of the different modules built and integrated all into one. So like, it's a great play for, like, if you're here, you're growing, you're starting with onesie, twosie employees, like as you move up the scale, that's what I would do. Find something super integrated. Like, try to avoid buying like 15 different solutions. That's where I think actually HR, like, a lot of times screws that up, because they get excited. Like what I said, we said at the beginning, like it's all of the like FOMO of like, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. And like, what? Like, you just need one system. No one cares about the system.
Yeah.
You just want it to be there. And like, you just need to make sure that you can do performance reviews. You know what I mean? Like the things that people care about, like taking a day off, booking overtime, right? And also like just being able to like look up your own information. If you have to move employees, et cetera, like that should be simple. But even if it's not, your HR person could do it if you're really small. So I just think it's like, focus on the important stuff. Again, what problem are you trying to solve, right? And the more integrated it is, and you just think a little bit ahead. But again, don't do things in silos. Like, there is like so much that can be gained in like 10 conversations with people, and people love to share their insights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like your double clicking on the fact, identify the problem first. Because sometimes, yes, core HRIS and our core tech stack that we have in our HR function might help us solve for that. But then if we start with the business problem, you might come across a situation where your current technology stack might not solve that need. And instead of going shopping around, that's where I would say, with AI and all the tools that are at our disposal, if we partner with the right people internally or externally, we can do a custom internal build as well. I'll give you an example, and that might spark some thoughts for you as well, but I'd love to hear other such use cases where you think we can do internal build. So there was this client of ours who came to us saying that they were a professional services organization. They said they have to go and pitch for client work. And in order to pitch for client work, they have to look at talent internally. And every time they have to go pitch, it's a different team based on the context of the client that they're pitching for. So for them, talent discovery was a huge issue, because they could not find the right talent just looking at the job title. And our typical system, HR systems, only give us visibility for who is who in the organization, from where they sit in the organization and what's their job title. So we partnered with their IT team to build an internal talent marketplace for them with the business problem of talent discovery. How can we enable quick talent discovery where a hiring manager or pitch manager can come in and quickly say, I'm looking for somebody who's worked on so-and-so client with this UX capability with 3 years experience. So they could go granular and look for talent. And it was a very easy build for this organization, because half the heavy lifting was done by AI. AI could do the skills parsing. AI could make sense of the time spent. They were collecting other operational data on projects as well. So that was one use case where they didn't have to go shopping and buy eightfold.ai because they wanted a talent marketplace. And there was no right fit for that solution for that organization.
And just to share a thought, like as you're talking about, that's such a good example, because right now we're at like historic low turnover rates. Okay. Yeah. Like, because the uncertainty in the market, right? No one's leaving. Like, unless forced, they are not going anywhere. So, but we're also at the same time, like, I think at the historically low engagement, right?
Yeah.
Like you could look at any major like benchmark on this, like across any geography, right? It's like 3 out of 4 people minimum are completely disengaged. So this is like productivity nightmare, right? And it's like, what do you do? And like internal movement is of course like an energy generator, right? And it also, gives people like just the opportunity to be looked at. Like in a good day, in the best market, internal mobility is one that always gets left behind, right? And that's your internal people getting annoyed that they apply to things, they don't get an opportunity, they don't get looked at, et cetera. And a lot of times the leaders don't even know that's happening, right? Depending on, how big or how it's structured. But to put a focus on that is always a good idea, but especially in this market. But yeah, that's a really good example.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there other areas, Susy, that you think, and I'm getting into future imagination, if we have to imagine the future of HR a year, 2 years from now, I think we can't think about 5 years anymore because that's too far out and who knows what will happen in 5 years. So what would that look like? Like if you have a vision for a future of HR in an organization, what would you envision it to be with AI supporting the capability redefinition in an organization?
So I think that HR, as it continues to evolve, like if I think, when people say, hey, I have a head of HR job open, like, do you have anybody you'd recommend? So then I think about this, like, who would I recommend, right? And usually pretty much 100% of the time, the people that I would recommend are people who have blended backgrounds on the business side. And, of course, I'm biased because, of course, this is my background as well. But I do think this will become even more of a thing as we move forward. And it will be actually blended even on the tech side, which will become interesting. Because I think the major players of the future, like the people who will be most successful, are going to be critical thinkers. Like this is going to be the same application to HR. HR is not immune to like the norms, right? So they're saying like number one future skill, like at Davos, for example, was critical thinking. So I think it's the people who are able to curate the best information and communicate it that are going to be the most successful. So those people will need to come as well to HR, right? And that means that you're going to have like tech savviness. So I think it starts with the schools. The schools need to train people differently, right? So that, it is about AI, but it's also about the application of AI, how to communicate it, et cetera. The human piece of it is equally important to the tech piece because you're just using a tool in the end, right? And whether it's AI or any other system. So I think that will be the future. They'll start to modernize those programs. I think Western already, I saw the other day that they launched a program that basically is looking at the human side of AI management. And I was like, man, that's really smart. Like that is exactly where I think we need to go. And I think in organizations, like they're going to start to relook, traditional model in HR would be like kind of 3 centers of expertise, right? There'd be like a talent one, a compensation one, and then a learning one. These things will still exist. They'll just kind of change in flavor, right? And then the rest is the operations. And the operations should continually get more automated, right? Like payroll and like just all of the different like record keeping, et cetera. And of course, there's the strategic arm of the HR partners, right? So I think that tech savviness too on the HR partner side, they need to know the business. So I always say, my pet peeve is like, in HR, everybody's like, I don't have a seat at the table. I'm like, you have a seat at the table, use it. Like, use your seat, right? Like you wouldn't expect a marketer to join the company and not understand your market or the company and how it works. Like, of course, HR should. So I think that expectation is just going to be stronger. And we're gone out of the place of where HR are nice people. They're people, like I think that lots of people could work in HR, right? So with these mandates and it's going to be interesting, right? It's just going to keep on being more integrated on the tech side and strategic side, because what you said earlier about feeding algorithms, it's going to be a part of the job. It will be what we talked about before about it's going to be someone who's like a technical expert in HR and then someone who's a branding one who's also kind of technical too, but more on the human side, right? So anyways, that's a lot of thoughts all at once, but there you go.
That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. There are so many points that you called out that I want to do a deeper dive in. We'll park that for another conversation. And as we wrap up today's episode, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about as we close our conversation today?
Yeah, I think that it's been awesome, like talking about this. I think it's a continual discussion. Like neither of us have it figured out, but I think it doesn't matter. Like if you start with like the basic principles of like figuring out what is the problem you're trying to solve, don't just jump to AI. Like we're talking about AI in organizations, but it's just one of many tools you could use. You could still use a piece of paper, like generally not recommended, or people come to me, like somebody asked me last month, they're like, what do you use to manage your client list? And I'm thinking, I use Excel. I don't need to invest. But like a lot of founders make the mistake of over investing and using all these tools because they're hearing all these things and people are recommending it to them. but you're just maintaining a list with some columns of information, right? And even if you had a few hundred of these, you know what I mean, in there, like you still don't need anything really. You might want something else, and that's cool too. And there's probably 50 ways I could use systems that I have like to do the stuff. But I also was like, there's something good about just having the easy, clean, non-messed up, no one touches it way of tracking something, right? So anyways, just something to think about. Figure out what you're trying to solve and right size your solution to be cheap and cheerful, to start when you're doing anything. And then from there, make some strategic bets. And that's where you start considering all of this other like complication that we've talked about throughout the call.
Awesome. Fit for purpose, right sizing it. Amazing. Yes. What a great way to end our conversation today. So this has been an insightful conversation, and I really want to thank you, Susy, for sharing your expertise and perspective on how HR can navigate AI transformation using structured, data-driven approaches like Six Sigma. That's just one of the many out there. And as we've discussed, AI isn't just a tool, it's reshaping how HR operates and supports the broader business transformation as well. So thank you again for sharing your knowledge, experience, and insights with us.
It's my pleasure. And it's awesome to learn from you. You're a killer in this space. So look forward to also following you. So thanks, Shveta.
Thank you. Be sure to follow Susy Martins on LinkedIn for more insights on HR transformation, and visit yenza3.com for resources on AI and HR strategy. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the TIDES podcast.